So when people say, where do you get your protein? There are lots of great answers. And remember, when people ask you questions, they don't want a soliloquy. They want a soundbite. So one great answer for that is, you know what? Protein is one of the most ubiquitous nutrients that there is. It's actually in everything that grows up out of the ground. Now, for some people, that's enough. For other people, particularly if they've been hanging out at gyms with trainers, they're going to want a little bit more. So you can say to them, there is an internist in Santa Rosa, California named John McDougall. 25 years ago, he put $10,000 into a bank account so that any nutritionist, dietitian, or physician who could come up with a varied plant-based diet that was deficient in protein could claim that money. It's been there all this time. And for golly, the first 20 years it was actually drawing interest. You can also say, you know what? There are so many high protein foods in the plant kingdom. It's not just from animals. Beans are full of protein, and beans, in fact, have the one amino acid that could be missing in some plant-based diets. So you do want to eat beans and quinoa and pistachio nuts, because they all have the amino acid lysine. But you know, if you eat a varied diet, you are going to do fine. And if you're pregnant, if you're a bodybuilder and you want extra protein, just get it. I put a scoop of chocolate Vega in my smoothie in the morning because I work out at the gym, and I have this fantasy that because my dad was a boxer, he was actually a doctor, but he worked his way through medical school as a prize fighter in Detroit. Those genes are in me. And when I go to the gym, I want to feel like, yeah. And so I have my chocolate Vega, plus it's chocolate, and there's never anything wrong with that. So learn about protein. Learn about calcium. Is it a non-issue? We used to think it was a non-issue. Not quite. Obviously, you need it. You also need weight-bearing exercise for your bones. You need to not take in too much salt, too much caffeine. You don't want to drink cola with phosphorus. That gets rid of your calcium. And you want to get calcium. But where did the cow get her calcium? This cow that supposedly has so much calcium to spare that it's all going into her milk that we then steal. Where did that calcium come from? Grass. Because calcium is a mineral. Where do minerals live? In the dirt. So how do you get something out of the dirt into a form that animals and humans can assimilate it? Through the green plants. So when you eat kale and collards and turnip greens and broccoli and bok choy and other foods too, sesame seeds, almonds, figs, you're getting calcium. And the fact is, nowadays, when you can get non-dairy milks, soy and almond and coconut in the regular supermarket, that stuff is fortified with at least as much calcium as dairy milk, sometimes 50% more. You just have to be sure you're drinking it to get it. B12, the one supplement every vegan needs. They say sometimes, you'll hear people say, well, if you have to supplement the B12, that means you shouldn't be vegan. But the National Institutes of Health says that anybody over 50, regardless of diet, needs to supplement vitamin B12. Well, my wonderful friend and mentor, the dietitian Ginny Messina, says, if supplementing B12 means that it is unnatural to be vegan, it is also unnatural to be over 50. So do take the B12. You can run into serious trouble if you don't. It's the easiest thing on earth to supplement. You don't even have to swallow a pill. It dissolves in your mouth. So read, learn what you need to learn. You do not have to become a nutritionist. You do not have to be an expert. You just have to know the basics. It's kind of like, who's a parent? Did you kind of read something before your child was born? Now, I was absolutely compulsive about it. I read everything about being pregnant that I possibly could, and I thought after the baby is born, I will read everything about babies. But my baby had colic, and I didn't get to read anything. But, you know, I was trying. So we try when we're interested in something to get educated. If you're interested in this way of life that will start saving animals the day you begin, and will also start clearing your arteries, lowering your blood pressure, lowering your cholesterol level, slimming your frame if that is something that you desire. A whole foods, plant-based diet will do that, and you get to eat enough. You know, I am an obesity survivor, as the introduction said. I'm maintaining a 65-pound weight loss for close to 30 years, which is probably some kind of record. Well, that is very kind, but it is totally because of the grace of God and the wonders of a plant-based diet. These things can happen, they do happen, they happen all the time. I had a couple of wonderful guests on my podcast, which you can get on iTunes and Stitcher and other places. Just look up Main Street Vegan. But the show that week was called The Wrestler and the Drag Queen. And I had two wonderful guests. I did have Honey LeBronx, the vegan drag queen, and I also had Big Bald Mike. Big Bald Mike lives in Austin, Texas, and he describes his life as 1 year vegetarian, 2 years junk food vegan, 1 year whole foods vegan. Now, at his top weight, Big Bald Mike, who was an arm wrestler even then, weighed in at 571 pounds. He has lost well over 160 pounds in his 1 year as a whole foods vegan. So if Big Bald Mike can do it, and I mean, he's really, you got your motorcycle jacket there that says vegan? This guy is bald and tattooed all over, and he's great big, and he loves bunnies, and he cares about animals, and he's healing himself and healing the planet. He was actually in that movie, The Wrestler. So if you ever watch that, get it on Netflix or something with Mickey Rourke, and you see a great big guy with tats on his head, that's Big Bald Mike before he became a whole foods vegan. So I digress. V, validate your choices. E, embody a healthy lifestyle. Can you be a junk food vegan? Yes. Help yourself. Now, when I started out, there wasn't any vegan junk food. We were protected from that. Now, we've got everything. We've got cookies and cupcakes and ice cream and cheese that melts and marshmallows and all kinds of stuff, and that is wonderful. So when somebody says, I could never be vegan, I could never give up pizza, we say, you don't have to. I could never be vegan, I could never give up donuts. You don't have to. You just don't want to make pizza and donuts the bulk of your diet, because then you're not going to embody this healthy life that is going to draw people over, that's going to attract them so that they'll want to do what you do. So you also want to take good care of yourself. You want to get enough sleep. You want to do some exercise, you know, maybe some meditation, calm yourself down so you won't be so mad at people that do things differently. That's all going to help. That's all going to help you be happy and healthy and stay young forever. I am 63. Never thought this was what 63 was going to look and feel like. So embody that healthy lifestyle. G, get to know other vegans, because most of us are not crazy at all. I mean, sure, we have a few eccentrics here or there, but you know what? That just makes us interesting. So seriously, through the, is it Alliance for Animals? Did I get the name? Yeah, Alliance for Animals, through Meetup, through all kinds of ways that you can find vegans in person and online too, just so that if you're working in a place where it's just typical, that you get out your nice, lovely lunch, and somebody walks by, maybe different people, maybe the same person who really ought to get a job somewhere else, will say, ew, I used to feed my cat something that looked like that. You know, people say things like that. But you know what happens if you stay with it? And all these wonderful things happen for you, and that person does get another job somewhere else, and you run into them 10 years later, they're going to say, I used to think you ate really weirdly, but then I went to my doctor, and he said my blood sugar was up. And he said my cholesterol was elevated, and that if I didn't want to have to go on Lipitor, I needed to make some serious changes. So, okay, you win. Now I eat weird too. It'll happen. So that's G. Get to know us. Have fun. I mean, this is Madison. I don't know what's really going on here, but out in the world, it's like this is a hotbed of veganism and other wonderful things going on. So, you know, live the dream. A, this is my favorite of my whole acronym, and that is add more to your life than you subtract. And this has to do with foods, and this has to do with everything else. You see what happens. You go vegan, and people start noticing you're doing something different, and they're curious. And so people will say something like, okay, what's this vegan thing you're doing? And sometimes we'll get the idea, a live one, you know, like, and we'll say, okay, when you're vegan, you don't eat any meat or chicken or fish. You don't eat any eggs, and that includes in baked goods. You don't eat any dairy products. That includes cheese, even pizza. That includes butter. And if you're an ethical vegan, you don't wear leather or fur or wool or silk. You lost him back at butter. I mean, he's waiting to hear, and we don't have sex, and we don't take vacation, and we never do anything fun. No, that's not how you're going to get somebody. When they say, what is this vegan thing all about? You say, you know, in all honesty, other than having my children, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. I feel so clear when I drive in the country and I see the cows out grazing. I know that at least I'm not supporting what's going to happen to them eventually. I know I'm saving lives. It makes me feel really good. And the last time I saw my doctor, he said, we may have to do these tests again because everything was so much better, but nothing had changed except my diet. And the food I eat is just so good. I go to all these ethnic restaurants. I'm trying Ethiopian food. I'm trying Burmese food like I've never eaten before. And you know what? I get to eat beautiful food. I didn't know until I started doing this that I used to eat beige food. And now I eat food with lots of brilliant colors. And what I tell people is your shopping cart and your plate needs to look like a Christmas tree. That is mostly green with splashes of other bright colors, because that's where you get the vitamins and the minerals and those fabulous phytochemicals. All the different colors have the different phytochemicals, and that's what protects against degenerative disease and keeps you young just about forever. It's a good thing. So how does that translate into actual food? What's for dinner, Mom? Well, I have a wonderful mentor named Dr. Tell Oren. Does anybody know Dr. Tell Oren? He's not terribly far from here. He's in Minneapolis, has a great raw vegan restaurant called the Ecopolitan. It's really good if you go to Minneapolis. But when people ask him, what do I eat? He says, well, I'd like to make sure that every day you have a really big salad. Now, I just have to spend a minute on big, because in the vegan world, this is not a salad. This is an appetizer for a small child. I get my salad bowls from the restaurant supply house. My private salad bowl, my with the husband salad bowl, my people are coming for dinner salad bowl, because you need some room for tossing. So, big salad. And then Dr. T says, in addition, I'd like for you to have a serving of dark leafy greens. I wish I knew about dark leafy greens earlier in my veganism. I don't think I really had a dark leafy green until I was 40 years old. Thank God I didn't wait any longer. So we're talking kale, collards, the really dark green stuff, because that's where the chlorophyll is, that is very similar to the hemoglobin in your blood. It may be the healthiest substance on the planet. Then, Have, says Dr. T, a cabbage family vegetable. Kale, being miraculous, there's someone here in a kale t-shirt, is both a dark leafy green and a cabbage family vegetable. But you can also eat Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kohlrabi, whatever it is, cabbage family vegetable, simply because there are some phytochemicals in there that you can't find anyplace else. Do you really have to do that every single day? No, but 3-4 times a week, try to fit that in. Then, says Dr. T, I'd like for you to have a lovely fruit salad. And just think, now we're in the summertime and the berries are starting to come and some of the other fruits, the peaches are going to be coming before long. So you have a nice fruit salad. If you're hungry during the day, have another piece of fruit. Then he says, I'd like for you to have a serving of legumes. Now, a lot of our dietitians talk about having more than 1 serving a day of legumes. They are so wonderful. They're full of antioxidants, they're full of fiber, they're full of protein. There is nothing wrong with them. In fact, one year, when Dr. Greger was reporting on the highest antioxidant foods, small red beans won. But it's sort of like Miss America. You can never have the title more than 1 year. So, we've gone on now to other kinds of foods, but small red beans are really, really good for that. So have beans on toast or bean burgers or chili. Just get some beans into your body. Then, says Dr. T, I'd like for you to have a serving of a whole grain. Somebody said to me not long ago, do you know, we don't eat any grains in this country. We eat grain products. And when you think about it, even what we think of as whole grain, like we'll talk about whole wheat bread, that's fine, nothing wrong with it. If you don't have a gluten sensitivity, enjoy whole wheat bread. And yet, once you grind that grain up into a flour, it's no longer whole like it was when it was a grain. So if you can have some brown rice, or millet, or magical quinoa, that's kind of the kale of the grain family, that's a wonderful thing. Then, says Dr. T, I would like for you to have a serving of nuts or seeds. If you're a small person, if you're trying to lose weight, maybe you don't want to have a lot of nuts and seeds, maybe a couple of tablespoons. But if you're a larger person, if you're an athlete, then have a third of a cup, have a little bit more, because that is the one food, nuts and seeds, the one food that have been shown that people who eat them live longer than people who don't eat them. They even know that at the Hampton Inn. That's why they had the slivered almonds with the oatmeal. It's wonderful. It's getting out there. So go to the farmer's market, go to ethnic markets, find all these things that you didn't know existed and open up to all these exciting flavors and wonders. This has got to be fun. And if it's fun, you can do it for 30 years or forever. N in the word vegan. Never forget the animals. Who has a copy of Main Street Vegan? Because I'm going to read to you a little bit here at the close. And there are copies of this book over in the book room, far corner. I will be happy to sign them for you and also just talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. Also, there's literature there about Main Street Vegan Academy, if you think that you would ever want to become a vegan lifestyle coach. It's 5.5 days in fabulous New York City. We have 2 Main Street Vegan Academy graduates right there. Will you stand up or do something and make yourselves known? And we have someone else who is going to be coming to the June course next week. Yeah. So we've talked a lot in this 45 minutes about health, about vitality, about youthfulness. It's all great. But I got to tell you, I am not a vegan for any of those reasons. I love those reasons, but that's not why I do this. I do this because from the time I was a little kid, it just didn't seem right to take somebody else's life because I liked how they tasted. So I want to read you a little something that I hope touches your heart, because N in this acronym, validate your choices, embody healthy lifestyle, get to know other vegans, add more to your life than you subtract. N is never forget the animals. Because you see, what you eat for any given meal is just one meal. You've had thousands, you'll have thousands more. But if there is some body on your plate, that's life and death. That's all there is. In the end comes the slaughterhouse. I spent a day in one. The screams and the smells will never leave me. But my clearest memory is of one animal, a used-up dairy cow who had not come from a factory farm. She knew humans and didn't expect to be murdered by them. When she stopped in her tracks, unwilling to proceed up the ramp to her death, the man who was to stun her with the captive bolt pistol, a mercy when it works, whistled to her. He whistled to her the way he'd whistle to his dog when he went home that evening. And even though she heard the screams and smelled the blood, she had faith in this person who pretended to be her friend. But she was shot with the bolt, hoisted up by one leg, her throat slit, and her lovely skin sliced off her from jawbone to anus, falling into a pile for shoes and boots and belts and bags. Her carcass rushed past the USDA inspector, who had time for a cursory glance before the next one, and the next, and the next. She was eviscerated and cut into pieces by low-paid workers who spent their days in a refrigerator, ankle deep in blood, because in that tiny Missouri town, bypassed by both the railroad and the interstate, there was no place else to go. When her parts showed up at a store in St. Louis in styrofoam cradles and plastic wrap, the people who bought them knew nothing about this cow. They weren't there when she responded to a whistle and met her death, having just exhibited a very human trait, trust. But I was there, and because I was, it's my obligation to tell you her story. Thank you so much. Namaste.